Aloha and welcome to Conversations to Enlighten and Heal. I'm your host, KG Stiles. I'm here to all right, so I'm your host, KG Stiles. Please, there will be a link after the show to click on to subscribe to my newsletter so you never miss a show of conversations. So today I'm excited to be speaking with Cayelin Castell. Cayelin is a renowned shamanic astrologer and teacher and co-founder of the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School. Cayelin teaches live events as well as online classes worldwide. On today's show, Cayelin will talk about the new Venus cycle and how it will affect you. You'll learn about the entire 19-month Venus cycle with Leo Overtones. After the show, Cayelin will stay on to answer your questions. The Q&A window is open, so please feel free to interact with us during the show. Just make sure it is on. Let's see, Q&A. Yes. So, all right, so after the show, as I said, Cayelin will stay on to answer your questions. So please join me in welcoming to the show Cayelin Castell.
Thank you, KG. It's great to be here, and I'm always so excited to talk about the Venus cycle, and it's always fun when there's a new one getting ready to start. So I think we're going to have a great time. So did you have any questions that you want me to start with, or do you just want me to jump in?
Yes, well, I do have questions, but I also, want you to get, maybe you're going to tell us this to begin with. So maybe you could just let us know what is the Synodic Cycle of Venus?
So any synodic cycle, synod means with, or the synodic cycle means it's with the sun. So basically, a synodic cycle is the whole time it takes for Venus to repeat of any phase, come back to any point in the cycle. And many cultures, the Sumerians, the Mayans, the Celtic cultures, many cultures around the planet worked with the Synodic Cycle of Venus. And in fact, we'll be talking about this, the story of Inanna and how she goes in, she makes a descent into the underworld, and she has to release vestments as she's going, and then she's killed and she dies, and then she's rescued and reborn, and then she ascends back up and gets all her vestments back. That is actually a literal telling of the Synodic Cycle of Venus, what happens in Venus's cycle. And the Sumerians literally reenacted that cycle every 8 years as a whole cultural practice. So we began really looking at it from the shamanic astrology perspective. Daniel did a lot of research. Daniel Demario, who's the founder of the shamanic astrology paradigm, he started doing a lot of research back in the mid-90s and started understanding the Synodic Cycle of Venus and the relationship to the Inanna story. So we started working with it at that time, and over the years, I found myself doing more ceremonial work with the cycle and found it to be really powerful, because this whole piece about how the Sumerians worked with it and they reenacted the cycle collectively every 8 years, kind of with some clues like maybe this would be a good thing for us to work with ceremonially, to not only empower ourselves personally, but also to help empower the greater collective around the divine feminine. And we, of course, know that the divine feminine energy is really returning to the planet in a beautiful way right now. And so working with the Venus cycle is a way to participate with that. So it's very exciting, and something I just love sharing with people. So I'm very, very happy to be here to do that.
Yes, I'm excited about this new feminine cycle that we are headed into. It's like the return of the goddess and balancing that's happening now with the energies. So no time like the present, if you ask me. So you want to go ahead and get started with your slideshow and
share my what I've got here for everybody, because that's always helpful to have visuals, I feel. Hopefully this will be helpful. And also, I just decided to add some fun facts and things about Venus. But there is a new cycle of Venus starting on August 22nd, 2015. She will go retrograde on July 25th, and what the ancient cultures did was they always started the cycle of Venus when Venus rose as a morning star, was visible in the morning sky. And when she rises up as a morning star, she's still retrograde. She's really bright, and you cannot miss her. It's like she just pops in super bright and brilliant. So that's where they started the cycle. So we'll be talking about that. I'm also going to share a little bit, and this is kind of an overview of what we're going to be looking at, the Earth's relationship to Venus. Why is Venus so important to the Earth? And there's some fun things about that. I'll talk a little bit more and show some things about ancient cultures and how they work with Venus. We'll also talk about the Synodic Cycle of Venus and how it relates to the story of Inanna. We'll go into a little more depth on that. We'll look at the Venus Overtone. What's the greater collective energy of each Venus cycle, which is determined by the sign Venus is in when she rises as a morning star. And then we'll talk a little bit about the next Venus cycle. So that's kind of what I have in mind here. And I'm also happy to answer questions anytime, KG, so just ask away if you need to do that.
Well, there are definitely some questions I have, and we'll just kind of intersperse them with your presentation.
All right, sounds great. Okay, so just the first thing I thought would be fun to see is how Venus and the Earth are very similar. So Venus is about the same size as the Earth, and it appears to be about the same age and also a similar density and chemical composition. So I'm not going to linger on these points very long. I just want to give people a sense of how Venus and the Earth are similar. And actually, Venus is the closest planet to the Earth as well. Now, if we look at the different sizes, we can see how Venus and Earth are the same size. Look at the size of Mars in relationship to Earth and Venus. This kind of gives us a sense of that comparison. Then the other factor is that Venus is a mirror to the Earth, and even her symbol is in the shape of a mirror. So many times, depending on who's looking at this, they'll say that Venus is like a sister planet to the Earth. So here are some of the things that connect Earth or like create that mirroring effect. One of them is the fact that Venus rotates the opposite direction of the Earth. Earth is rotating counterclockwise, and Venus is rotating clockwise. That's a jet going over. I'm sorry. I was hoping they would be quiet today, but I live near an Air Force base. So anyway, this particular Venus cycle, not this one, but the next one that will start in April of 2017 is part of an 8-year cycle it's kind of loud, I realize, where the people that built New Grange in Ireland were tracking an 8-year Venus cycle that every 8 years Venus rises at the December solstice and lights the passage at New Grange. You can see on the slide here that this is the light coming in through the window, lighting this passage. And at the December solstice, the sun does that every year, but every 8 years, Venus actually rises 20 minutes before the sun, illuminates this window, lights the passage, then it goes dark, and then the sun rises and relights the passage. And this was a big deal to them. They were definitely checking that out. So this gives us a hint that it was so important to them to have that connection to the 8-year Venus cycle that they built this structure to not only track the solstices, but also to track when Venus would be with the solstice sun. Also, this is just an image of a observatory that the Mayans built that was tracking the Venus cycle. And they had these viewing shafts where they could see Venus, and they were looking for the northernmost and the southernmost positions. They were also looking at equinox sunsets. But what's really interesting is this staircase right here, where this arrow is pointing, matches Venus setting at its most northern position. And the whole building is on a diagonal with the solstices. So they were, not just Venus, but of course, tracking the seasonal cycles as well, which is what the people who built New Grange were doing, because they were tracking Venus with the winter solstice or the December solstice. Also, the Mayans had something called the Dresden Codex.
Could I?
Yeah.
Are you supposed to be going through your slideshow right now?
Yeah, you're not seeing it?
No. We were
Uh-oh.
seeing it when we were You want to, did you go forward on your cursor? And there you go. Now you're doing it.
Okay, well, I've been doing it all along. Well, let me just go back real quick. And you haven't seen any of these slides?
I just picked up on, I think she's supposed to be going through her slides while she's saying all this.
Right.
And you're staying on the first slide. So do you want me to tell you when you're back to the second slide, or?
Well, this is the, okay, so I did the overview, didn't see the overview.
Great.
Okay. I don't need to go through that again, but
okay, great.
Then I did the slide that talked about how Venus is the similar diameter of the Earth. And are you seeing these?
Yes, I am.
All right. So then the different sizes of Venus, I had put it on the slideshow. For some reason, it's not going to show it on the slideshow, so that's okay. All right. So then the different sizes of Venus, Earth, and Mars, and how Venus' symbol is shaped like a mirror. So you can see that here in this slide, right? And then this is showing how Venus, the Earth is spinning one way, and Venus is spinning the opposite direction, like a mirror to the Earth. Okay. And then I was talking about New Grange, and this is the complex that was built. This thing is massive, and there's light that comes through this window up here. Every December solstice is the only time it's aligned so that the light lights the passageway, and this passageway is lit all the way back to an altar in the back of this space. So this big circle that they built here, and has different wings to it and so on, but there's an altar in the back where the sun comes and lights only at the December solstice. And then this is
coming. That's coming up in about a year and a half. The next cycle.
The one where Venus happens, so every year the December solstice sun will light up that passage at New Grange. But in December 2017, Venus will be with the sun and rising 20 minutes before the sun. We won't see Venus, but she comes up before the sun, lights the passage. It goes dark, and then the passage is relit. And this is the little window box that gets lit right here that you can see in this picture. So this is part of this whole New Grange project. And then I was showing this Mayan observatory of Venus. This is actually a Venus observatory, and they were tracking Venus as at her northern and southernmost positions, and also tracking the equinoxes and the solstices. And this staircase here below the observatory is matching the northernmost position of Venus setting. So when Venus is currently would be in the sign of Cancer, late Gemini, early Cancer, that would be when Venus is setting at her most northern position. And they were tracking that. It's kind of cool. They were also tracking the solstice, because the way that the observatory is set up is on a diagonal so the sun would be setting at on one side of the observatory at winter and on the other side at summer. So they were very tuned in to that. And let's see. Then I guess we kind of left off at the Dresden Codex. So I hope that catches everybody up. So
yes. Thank you for recapping.
Oh yeah, totally, my pleasure. So, so the Dresden Codex is one of only two that have really survived intact, and it was tracking the Venus cycle. It was also doing the moon as well, but it was really tracking the Venus cycle for thousands of years, down to like decimal points of days. They were so attuned to where Venus would be at what time. It was amazing. And this is some of the research that helped inform us around, that this information helps to let us know that the Venus cycle was vital, very vital to their culture and to knowing when to do certain rituals. And there's a 260-day ritual cycle. Venus is in the morning sky for about 260 days, and in the evening sky for about 260 days. And that connects.
What age are we? When did this?
Well, any cycle. No, any time. That's happening.
Even now, I mean, that hasn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's it depends on when you start tracking, but it's about 260 days. So it could be 263. It might be.
No, I'm talking about the Dresden Code. When was this first implemented?
It goes for thousands of years. It goes.
And when did it fall out of? Did it fall out of use? Is it still used?
Well, it was rediscovered. I don't know the exact date on that. It was rediscovered, and they found that it took them a while to be able to decode it and figure out what they were saying, but they found that they were tracking Venus cycles for thousands of years, well into our future as well.
I was just wanting to get a feel for when was this happening? When was this? I hear it was for thousands of years, but when did it fall out? When did it lose its importance? When did it fall out of being used?
No, I think probably when the Spanish came is my guess. Okay. And it might have been starting to fall out of importance then, but it was something that was very important to them for a long time. And I think that they may have had ways of tuning into this without the codex as well, because there's Mayan day keepers and people that still are attuned to this information. It's just we in the West didn't understand it till we could decode the codex. So anyway, some other facts to know about Venus and the Earth, and here you can see them again. They're very close in the same size. But it takes 243 days for Venus to make one full rotation. It only takes 24 hours for the Earth to do that. And then in 243 years, Venus will rotate 365 times. And of course, Earth rotates 365 times in 1 year. And then the really fascinating fact, and these are just numbers that connect up Venus and the Earth, that there are 243 years between Venus transits over the Sun in the same area of the sky. And you may recall that in 2004 and 2012, we had Venus transits over the Sun. And the one in 2012 was visible in the US. A lot of it was visible in the US. But there's, there can be 122 years in between, or 105 years from one set of Venus transits over the Sun to another. And they alternate where they are in the sky. So this is showing how in 1631, it was in December, the Venus transit was 7 Sagittarius, and then in 1639, 8 years later, it was a 4 Sagittarius. In 1761, it was at 6 Gemini, and so they alternate from December to June, and Sagittarius to Gemini. They're alternating, and then in 2004, we had it at 8 Gemini, and then in 2012, it was at 6 Gemini. But if you look at 1769 and to 2012, that's 243 years. And they're only 3 degrees difference between them. And from 1761 to 2004 is only 2 degrees difference. And that's kind of rounded up. So anyway, it will be 2117 before there is another Venus transit. It'll be in the opposite part of the sky of what we experienced. So there was some major activation that took place in 2004 and 2012 when Venus, and here's this little picture here of the Sun with the little dot of Venus going across the face of the Sun. It was amazing. We had a big event in Hawaii where people got to experience, and we watched for many hours the whole transit of Venus across the Sun. It was really spectacular and a very special time to tune into. And we're still, we don't know exactly what got energized or activated in that point, but it's still being revealed, as we go through time. And that was really only 3 years ago that happened. So it'll be interesting to see how it continues. And the Mayans felt that the Venus passages over the Sun were extremely important to pay attention to. And oftentimes it represented a time when regimes would change, new people would come into power, or a new power structure would happen. So that's something that got initiated and activated in 2012. So it'll be interesting to see what actually happens with that. So any questions so far, KG?
No, it's fascinating.
All right. Yes, I love this. Can you tell? Anyway, so the Venus cycle is 584 days, point something, something, something. Like the Mayans had it calculated down to like tenths of a day, but we just use the round number of 584 days. That is about a year and a half, or 1.6 years. It's really 18 and a half to 19 months that it takes. And when we look at how the Earth goes around the Sun in 365 days, but Venus, from a starting point, any one starting point with the Sun, from the Earth's perspective, we see a 584-day cycle. So just something to be conscious of, something to be aware of. And then, as Venus is making its path around the Sun, every year and a half or so, 19 months or so, Venus rises as a morning star. And she does that 5 times in 8 years. So 5 times Venus rises as a morning star. It's called the heliacal rise of Venus. And it's forming a perfect pentagram in the sky because she's rising in different places each time, and it's just tracing out this pentagram. And of course, we know that the pentagram has long been a symbol associated with the goddess, so the divine feminine. And that's really where that imagery originally comes from, is the Venus cycle. And, we sort of forgot. So now we're just helping to remember that. So this is actually where the Venus heliacal rises are happening right now. So in June of 2012, we had a heliacal rise of Venus, June 12th at 12 Gemini. And then on June 10th of 2020, there'll be another one. So it's usually shifting like a couple of days each time. Then on January 17th of 2014, Venus rose as a morning star at 18 Capricorn. And then on January 15th of 2022, she'll rise as a morning star at 15 Capricorn. You can see it's a couple of days difference there. But what's really, so we're in the tail end of
degrees Capricorn.
What?
15 degrees Capricorn.
Yes. Yeah, so it's just shifting slightly each time. So that pentagram is actually moving backwards through the backdrop of the stars. It's shifting backwards just slightly each time. And it takes about 1,260 years for the pentagram to make one entire circle. So that was something that they also figured out from the Dresden Codex. Anyway, so we're in the tail end of this Capricorn cycle right now. And then the new cycle will begin on August 22nd, 2015, when Venus rises as a morning star at 19 Leo. So 5 synodic cycles, or 5 heliacal rises of Venus every about year and a half or so, equals 8 years. So that means that on your birthday, when you're turning a multiple of 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, 56, 64, 72, 80, 88, 96. If you're turning a multiple of that, if you look at a chart, anybody's chart, Venus will be very close to where she was when you were born, within a couple of days, because it does shift a little bit, but it's really, really close. So that's meaning that she's returning to the same place she was in the sky with the sun at your birthday. Very important cycles that we are connected to. Now, something else to just realize is that it's not just the time of your birthday when Venus is coming back at that 8-year point. It's the whole entire cycle from the heliacal rise. So say, for example, you turned a multiple of 8 from January 17th to August 21st, January 17th of 2014 to August 21st of 2015, then your birthday, that would have been that multiple of 8, whether it was in 2014 or 2015, means that you are having your Venus return at that time. But the whole entire cycle is a ceremonial, a way to engage ceremonially and to empower your life with the understanding, which we're going to talk about a little bit more in a moment, of why it can be really important to work with this for yourself personally, but also in a collective way. Something that we've been doing more of over this last, actually starting with this last cycle. So that's pretty exciting. Oh, and I realized that I didn't finish this slide. Just not realize that. There are 2 morning star occultations in this next cycle. One will be December 8th and another will be December 7th. And what that means, and these images here are showing you that the moon is in a direct line with Venus. So it's just gonna cross right over Venus. So Venus is occulted, or like an eclipse. It's like it's gonna be visible, then the moon will cross over it, then it will become visible again. And these are accelerating points like an eclipse. Eclipses kind of accelerate the energy of whatever is being held in intention at that time. So October 8th and December 7th, well, this will happen. It's also going to happen on July 19th of this year, but it's in the evening sky. And probably not so visible because I think the sun, I think the occultation is happening before the sunset, so it's not going to be so easy to see. But some places on the planet will be able to see it. But again, we still feel the effects of the fact that there's this occultation. And the thing that's exciting about the December 7th one is it is visible in North and Central America. So something
that is close to when we have the last square between, well, it's within 1 degree. I mean, they'll be further apart. This is probably the Uranus-Pluto square is right about
Right. Well, we had the last exact one in March, but they're starting to separate out a little bit more, and they're yeah. So they're kind of at play here too. Interesting enough, yeah. So,
what was the fourth occultation? I saw 3 there. What was the fourth one?
Did I say 4? I meant 3.
It says there are 4 Moon Venus occultations.
That's why. Yes,
I only saw 3 dates, so
there's only
3.
There's 3.
Okay.
And that's why I said I didn't finish this slide, because I meant to put in evening star July 19th, 2014, and to correct this, because I had this was for a different year when I originally made the slide. So I missed correcting it. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Anyway. All right. So when Venus rises as a morning star and begins a new cycle, 584 days, because it'll be 584 days before she rises as a morning star again, the sign she is in, I've mentioned this before, is the sign of the Overtone, meaning that is the archetype of the feminine being integrated into the collective psyche of humanity for that full 584 days. So there's just one primary archetype. Of course, Venus goes through all these different signs and phases, and she has a very complex cycle that we can tune into. But just to know what's the overarching theme of the divine feminine at this particular time. And we've had a tremendous time. I've been working with a woman named Tammy Brunk to do a ceremony. We've been doing a Venus teleclass series to help people in their personal Venus return, but also to create a collective, kind of like the Sumerians did, a collective ceremony for the Venus cycle. And we'll be doing it starting with the next cycle as well. But we started this last year and have every Venus point where there's significant things happening. We've been doing these teleclasses and ceremony and helping people get tuned into that. So it's been really phenomenal. And we've been working with Capricorn from the shamanic astrology perspective. This is the queen bee, the wise one, and also the circle of grandmothers. So we feel like the circle of grandmothers really spoke to us to create this class because they wanted people to really connect into this new understanding, or this more expanded understanding of Capricorn as being the grandmothers. And what's interesting, and here we are at the 1st of July, when the United States Constitution was written, they actually based it on the Constitution of the Iroquois Confederacy. And the Iroquois told them that when they were writing this Constitution, that the one thing that they must not leave out, and all of the many great things of our Constitution do come from theirs, but one of the things they must not leave out was the circle of grandmothers, that no decisions are made without their approval. And of course, guess what they left out? So it's really great that this awareness of the grandmothers and their wisdom and how they can help guide us is coming back. And we've really worked with that a lot through this last Venus cycle. And we'll continue. We feel like the Overtone, Venus and Capricorn, is the sort of master cycle at this time, because it's when Venus is rising closest to the December solstice, and the December solstice is on the galactic cross. That can only happen every 26,000 years. So this is like the end and beginning of the 26,000 year cycle. And so this Venus cycle with the Capricorn overtone is really significant for us collectively at this particular time. And we're in the last weeks of the synthesis of this particular cycle. Last month, Venus retrieved her crown, the vestment that has to do with her crown. I'll tell you about that a little bit more in a moment.
So the grandmother,
go ahead.
The grandmother, the higher self, the angelic self, oversoul, there are different names for it. One of the names has been the grandmother.
Yes.
Yes, and we actually lived on this ancient healing grounds in Southern California, and it was called Madre Grande. It was the grandmother, which was a sacred healing grounds. There was never any, it was just where they would come for ritual enactments and just different ceremonies and rituals for, ascending to new levels, coming of age, things like that. I just thought that was kind of interesting. I think that is a motif that has been alive with a lot of indigenous cultures.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, I think in our maybe greater, more global culture, as this Venus cycle has been unfolding, there's been a lot more of that coming into people's awareness as well. And you know, not that it hasn't been coming into awareness before this, but it's been really remarkable. And we've had so much magic and people having such powerful transformative experiences working with the cycle, with and you know, bringing in the imagery and the connection to the circle of grandmothers. So it's very exciting. And we're really excited about the next overtone, it's Leo. So when Venus rises as a morning star on August 22nd, she'll begin her new journey that will last 584 days as the Leo goddess. And this is about the divine sovereign queen. And so where she doesn't give herself away to what it is she thinks she's supposed to be doing, but really being in touch with what she knows is who she is and how she can stand in that strength and power. Interestingly, this is also connected very much to Sekhmet, who is the lion-headed goddess, and who is also a very powerful imagery of that, and being the sovereign queen. So we're actually going to lead a group to the Sekhmet temple in Nevada as right after Venus rises as a morning star, to connect in with her and just to see, you know, what information we can gather about this cycle and how to work with it very consciously. So that's kind of exciting. We don't have all the details of that together yet, but we will be. You know, people want to connect with us, and I'll give information about how to do that. They can find out more about that as we go. So I'm just going to kind of give an overview of the cycle for those people who are interested at how this works, and then we'll be looking at a little bit at the next cycle, to bringing in the story of Inanna to this whole thing, and then also how you can know if you're in a Venus return or not. So what happens is Venus begins her cycle. She goes retrograde. Actually, she goes retrograde on July 25th. She'll conjunct the sun in early August, and then she'll rise up, and this is the horizon line. Like if we think of you know, her rising as a morning star, this side of the image is the morning sky, and then this side is the evening sky. So she rises up as a morning star. And I didn't put in all the 7 or 8 conjunctions that Venus makes with the moon, but she will spend about 260 days in the morning sky. She'll drop below the horizon, conjunct the sun again, and there she is for about 60 days to 90 days. And then she rises up in the evening sky, makes 7 or 8 conjunctions with the moon, goes retrograde, drops below the horizon, conjuncts the sun, and reappears in the morning sky. So that's basically how it works. So she's got her phase of morning star, her phase of underworld, meaning she's not visible, we don't see her, and then she's got her time as evening star, which is where she's at right now in the cycle. So this is kind of just me saying that again. Let me just move on to this slide. So how do we connect this to the Inanna story? Inanna passing through the 7 gates. And this is also, it's not just Inanna, it's Ishtar as well. The Babylonians and Sumerians basically had the same story, just a different name for the goddess. And what happens is that Inanna is in the great above, you know, and in the translation of the Sumerian text, they say she puts her ear to the great below, and she hears the call to go to the underworld. And there's different reasons based on who's translating the story or telling the story of why she goes. But one of the versions of the story is that she's going to attend the funeral of her sister, Ereshkigal, who's queen of the underworld's husband, who has died. And he is Gulagana, the great bull of heaven, which is also telling the story of the end of the matriarchy and the end of the age of Taurus, the age of the bull, interestingly. And so she gets all dressed up in all her ceremonial regalia, puts on her crown, gets her rod and staff, has her robe and her breastplate and her necklace and her, you know, rings and her waist belt, and you know, she's got all these vestments, and they represent symbols for each of the chakra gates. And when she arrives at the first gate, she's told that she can't pass through the gate unless she gives up her crown. You know, like she has to give up a vestment at each gate, and there's 7 or 8 gates leading into the underworld. And so she has to give up something at each gate. And it's symbolizing her releasing any distortions or, you know, things that are unhealthy or not connected to that particular chakra gate. And so the first thing she gives up is her crown, and that is her connection to the divine. You know, her knowing her divinity and that connection to the divine. And then, you know, she goes to the next gate, and that's where she has to release her measuring rod and staff, and that's her connection to her ability, third eye, ability to see and to connect with magic and those kinds of things. And then the throat chakra and the heart chakra and the solar plexus. And at each gate, it's like she is releasing any distortions that are connected to that. Maybe where she doesn't speak her truth, or she's not living authentically, or, you know, she's not standing in her power, or she's giving her power away, or she's trying to have power over others. Any kind of distortions that are connected with those particular chakras. Then she is in the underworld for about 2.5 to 3 months. And and these gates, these Venus gates happen when the moon, which is like a little crescent, silver crescent boat, like a little boat, comes to connect with Venus. And that represents her moving through the next gate. And then a month later, there's the next gate. And then a month later, there's the next gate. So it takes time for her to go through all these gates down into the underworld. And she's not seen because she's traveling with the sun from anywhere from 2.5 to 3 months. And so that was the time in the story when Inanna reaches the underworld. She's said to be stripped naked and bare. And she goes before her sister Ereshkigal, before her throne. And Ereshkigal kills her, hangs her up on a meat hook, leaves her there as dead. And this is partly because she's very jealous of Inanna, and she's also really upset and still in mourning for her husband, and the way that the story is told. But when Inanna went into the underworld, she knew that it might not be safe for her, so she talked to the planet Mercury, also known as Ninshabar, her right-hand person, and said, "If I don't come back, send help. Get me out of here." which is really smart. Anytime you're going to do a shamanic journey, you want to have somebody holding space for you to come back. You don't want to get lost in the underworld or, you know, in other realms and dimensions. You want somebody holding space for you. So when Inanna doesn't come back, Ninshabar, Mercury, which is a very fast planet, goes and visits all these other planets, which are representative of like Jupiter, Saturn, you know, Enki. She goes to the moon god, who doesn't want to help. And most of them say, well, no, we can't interfere with the ways of the underworld. But finally, Enki says, okay, I'll help. And so he creates these little beings out of the dirt from under his fingernails, the Galatur and the Krugara, gives them the food of life and the water of life, sends them into the underworld, and gives them instructions on how to get Inanna back. So they walk right in because nobody notices them. And basically, they find Ereshkigal, or Reshkigal, there's 2 ways of pronouncing it, in the throes of labor. So we don't know if she's actually giving birth or if she's in mourning. You know, different stories have different ways of talking about it, but she's, you know, in the Sumerian translation, it says, oh, my insides, and oh, my outsides. And then she's complaining and unhappy about how it's really unfair that I'm stuck here in the underworld and Inanna gets to be queen of heaven. And, you know, my husband's died. Now I'm having this baby and I don't know what I'm going to do. And she's just like really moaning and groaning about her situation. And so these little beings find her in this situation, and they say to her, you're right. It's not fair. You know, this is really sucks for you, basically. And she's surprised because she's used to people just saying, you know, you get to be queen of something, you should be grateful. Or, you know, it's really not so bad, or you just need to get over it and move on. And so they reflect back to her pain, and this heals her. So when she's so surprised, you know, and she's so grateful. So she says to them, I want to give you a gift. And she names all these different gifts that she could give them. And they say, nope, none of that. Finally, she runs out of ideas, and she says, okay, I want to give you something. What can I give you? And of course, they say, we want Inanna back. So then they get Inanna back. And but once somebody's in the underworld, they can't leave without sending somebody to replace them. So Inanna gets to return, and she goes back through the 7 gates, but there are these demons or daemons that go with her because they have to take somebody to replace her, and she has to choose that person. But at each gate, as she goes back through each gate, she gets the vestment back that she had to give up, which is like reclaiming a healthy relationship with that chakra energy. It's pretty cool. And then she'll go, once she goes through all the gates, she'll go retrograde, she'll meet with the sun again and rise as morning star, and the cycle starts all over. So this is what the Sumerians were doing. They were, they were tracking this particular cycle. Very amazing story that was really relevant to them at that time. So what we've been doing is looking at how to work with this ceremonially, work with each of the chakras at each of those points, either as releasing or reclaiming. Also, there's a whole period in the underworld where we, work with mourning the things that we've lost, and being in an underworld process. And the people that were in our Venus teleclass series had profound experiences in every phase of this journey. It's been just so fun, wonderful to watch. And that, we have a Facebook page where they've been posting, and everybody's so supportive. It's like the most amazing Venus cycle, and I've worked with lots of them over the years. This has been the most amazing, with this whole community engaged with the ceremony. Ceremonially engaging each phase of this Venus cycle has been profound. So what I want to share with you now is this, is if you can probably hopefully read this clearly on your screen. If you were born between these dates, like September 12th, 1943 to April 22nd, 1945, or September 10th, 1951 to April 20th, 1953, and it goes on. If you were born between those dates, you are in a Venus return, or you are going to start a Venus return on August 22nd, 2015, and it will last until March 31st of 2017. So that means you're in the Venus return that happens every 8 years near your birthday. So it may not, you may be born late in the cycle. You're either a morning star person, you're maybe an underworld person, or you're an evening star person. You may have Venus retrograde in the morning sky or the evening sky or in the underworld. So there's 3 places where Venus can be in its retrograde. And all those things have meaning and significance and are worth noting and understanding about where you are in the story. If you're a morning star, you might be born at one of the chakra gates. Maybe it's the 3rd chakra gate, or the 5th chakra gate. It can be anywhere within that story. And so knowing that, oftentimes what we have found is that people will really resonate with that, maybe having challenges or having had to reclaim a healthy relationship with that particular chakra, if that was the gate that they were born into in the Venus cycle. So I think I'll just pause here for a moment and see, KG, if you have any questions you want to ask me.
Oh, I just love the story that you're telling us. So my imagination is just going all over the place. So so when Venus, right now she's come out of the underworld, right? When did she come out of the underworld?
In December of 2014, and she made her first conjunction with the moon towards the end of December.
Okay.
So that was her, and so as she comes out of the underworld, she rises up into the evening sky, and then the moon comes along to be with her. And of course, it's a waxing moon. This is one of the things I think is so brilliant about the cycle. In the morning sky, she's met by the waning crescent moon, right before a new moon. And in the evening sky, she's met by the waxing crescent moon right after the new moon. So in the morning sky, she's releasing and letting go, which is so what's going on with the moon cycle. And in the evening sky, she's reclaiming, regaining, and, which is so what's going on, the waxing moon gaining light. So the waning moon is releasing light, and the waxing moon is gaining light. So it's like this perfect way that the cycle acts and manifests for us. So great.
Okay, so when does she go back into the underworld?
Well, so she is, I don't have the exact, I should have probably had this exact dates and stuff here in front of me, but she goes retrograde on the 25th, and it's early August. Let me just see if I can find here where she is or mid-August, somewhere in there, where she's going to be conjunct the sun. And she's only gone when she's retrograde, because she's between the Earth and the sun. It's only like 7 or 8 days. And sometimes it's actually as short as 3 days that she's not visible as she's shifting from evening sky to morning sky. And that's going to happen around the 15th of August when she's conjunct the sun at 15 Leo. And then she will rise up a few days later, 2 or 3 days later. Well, from the 15th to the 22nd is about a week. So she'll be coming up into the evening sky. We use a 10-degree orb to try to determine that, because different Venus cycles have a different amount of time they're actually in the underworld when she's retrograde. Some are shorter, some are longer. So we use a 10-degree orb. When Venus is 10 degrees away from the sun, she's going to be visible in the morning sky. So it's kind of a ceremonial, using those degrees, to get that sense of when she's rising up to start the new cycle.
And then when does she go for the longest period in the underworld is?
Well, she won't do that until next year. So there'll be, after she rises up and goes direct, which is in early September, that she goes direct around the 5th or 6th of September. Mm-hmm. Then the first moon conjunction after she has gone direct, and that'll be happening just a few days later, around the 9th of September, will be the first gate. And that's where she will release her crown, where, when she gets to the gatekeeper says to her, to pass through this gate, you have to give me your crown. And she's like, what? And he says, don't question the ways of the underworld. Just do it. Just, so that's the way the story is told. But we could imagine that we might tell it a little different.
And then she's so she goes through this process of releasing these gates for pretty much the entire cycle.
For 7 or 8 months. So, starting in September. So September, October, November, December, January, February, and then there will be an 8th gate in March. So then after that, she'll disappear into the underworld next year and be gone for 2 or 3 months, and then she'll reappear. Usually around, it'll probably be in July or August. It's usually in the same sign that she rose up as a morning star in, which is another cool feature of the Venus cycle.
So what sign is she rising up as
Leo.
a morning star? It'll be
Leo on August 1st.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So that
I was thinking of the first gate. The first gate, she's actually in Virgo.
Actually, she's still in Leo because she's
September,
around 14 degrees. So around September 9th or 10th, she's still in Leo.
Oh, she doesn't go into Virgo until like October. She doesn't get out of her shadow until October. Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So and then that'll be probably right around the time she goes to the second gate. And actually, what's really fascinating about this particular cycle, as we've been completing it, Jupiter's been with her, and of course, the closest conjunction last night, early this morning, and they'll still be really close together tonight.
Yeah, I understand.
Through the whole month of July into August 4th, they're making another exact conjunction, and then in early October, or mid to October, I don't remember the exact date, October 25th, later October, is when they're making their third exact conjunction. Because of the retrograde, Venus will actually be passing or with Jupiter 3 times, and that's not usual. This doesn't always happen.
And I understand that this is the closest they've been in conjunction for over 1,000 years or something.
Yes.
It's very unusual that they're so close.
And not only that, on the solstice this year, just a couple weeks ago, or less than 2 weeks ago, Venus and the moon and Jupiter were
I saw that. Yes.
Yeah.
That was gorgeous.
At the June solstice, at the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere. So that hasn't happened in a really long time as well. And then on not only that, they're going to be really close together. When they make their second conjunction on August 4th, they're going to be with Regulus, the star Regulus.
Yes.
So,
I think that's interesting. I wanted to ask about that. I wanted you to comment on Venus retrograding exactly conjunct the fixed star Regulus. What significance do you, from your shamanic perspective, have about that?
Thank you for asking that. And I, one of the things that is helpful for people to know is that ancient people would take time to go out and be under the sky and tune in and you know, visually connect with them when they could, or, you know, do shamanic journeying or meditation or something that would get them connected into these energies, because and also they would be doing ceremony with their own intentions, because of course we inform the mysteries as much as they inform us. So what we're holding in intention in connection with these kinds of things that are happening in the sky helps to magnify our intention, and it also helps to bring the into manifestation the intention of the planets as they come together. So it's a relationship that we've forgotten how to do, but the ancient people knew it, and that's why they built these structures to track these cycles, you know, to be tuned into that, and or had these ceremonies like the Sumerians did collectively with the Venus cycle or whatever was going on. So this one is ending with this huge Jupiter-Venus thing with Regulus, and then the new one begins with that also going on. Venus is going to be with Regulus as she goes retrograde, exactly, with Regulus as she goes retrograde. Jupiter is going to be close by. And Regulus is the heart of the Lion constellation. Mm-hmm. The heart
and star. It's now progressed over into Virgo, which is, I mean, it used to be in Leo, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so now it's I mean, that in itself seems to me symbolically this shift of leadership to more of a servant role. We could say that. Do you see, I mean, because Virgo is very much about healing and being of service and health and
honoring the sacred. So we could say that the original codes, light codes of the king queen archetype, which is Leo, and you know, being next door to Virgo, was to be in service, to hold the light energy for people, and Regulus, the heart of the Lion, and it's a Bohemian star. So the Bohemian stars are the magical stars of the ancient alchemists, who, when planets were near Regulus or any one of the other 14 Bohemian stars or magical stars, that's when they would do their biggest ceremonies, make their elixirs, their talismans, their potions, that kind of thing. So not only do we have Venus passing Regulus 3 times in a retrograde, but Jupiter's also there, and they're there together. So when planets were within 6 degrees of a Bohemian star, that was when they would be doing these ceremonies. And then in the middle of July 18th, the moon's going to be there with Jupiter, with Venus, with Regulus. That's so cool. So right before Venus goes into Virgo, and the Regulus was actually starting to be overlaid by Virgo, the seasonal sign of Virgos. The signs are seasonal at the end of November 2011, and that was the first. You know, that meant that that ended the 2,160 years, or however many years it was, of Leo, the seasonal sign of Leo, overlaying the heart star. So there was a big shift in consciousness and awareness that happened, and you know, that got seeded at that particular time. It's going to be playing out over the next couple thousand years. So now with Venus going retrograde right at that 0 Virgo point on July 25th, that's so significant. It's very important, and it's right there with Regulus. So to me, what happens is when Venus goes retrograde, that is the final synthesis, that from her retrograde point to her morning star rising point, which will happen on August 22nd, there is a big synthesis of the current cycle, the Capricorn Overtone cycle, and there's a preparation for the next cycle that's happening. So they kind of overlap a little bit, like there's a synthesis and completion, and a little bit of a preparing or gestation or getting ready for the new cycle that's happening. So we're in a very exciting time in the Venus cycle right now, and there will be July 18th is an 8th gate, and I like to think of it as the ascension gate, because Venus has reclaimed all her chakras, and there's an 8th chakra. Some people would say the 8th chakra is the opportunity for us to learn how to enjoy our creation that we've been so busy creating through the first 7 chakras that we maybe haven't taken the time to really enjoy what we've created. So the 8th chakra could be that, which I like that imagery a lot. But, you know, we can tune in and see how it really works for us and what it is for us.
Yes.
Yeah. So, any other questions you have?
Well, do you think this deepening, because I experience this as a deepening of the feminine that's happening in our awareness, in our consciousness, that's, you know, there's some of us that are more attuned and sort of the on the leading edge with feeling these energies being rebirthed at this time. But do you think this is also happening, you know, in the male psyche as well as the female psyche?
That is a great question. So from the way that we work with it in shamanic astrology is we see that Venus is the divine feminine. And for women, where Venus is on your chart, and also where she is in the Venus story, gives us information about the aspect of the feminine that you're here to help evolve, to, you know, to explore and to express that expression of the feminine, the divine feminine. And so there's at least 12 different expressions with many variations, of course, on each of those. And we've lived in a culture that has seen certain feminine expressions as more yin, like the Pisces, Cancer, Libra, the ones that are all about being in partnership and relationship and having children and taking, you know, being the nurse or the caretaker or the one that nurtures and takes care of. But there's very powerful solar feminine. So those ones I just mentioned are more lunar feminine. But there's these solar feminine archetypes, and Leo is so solar feminine. I mean, this is, Sekhmet wears the sun disk on her head. She wears the sun on her head. She is a solar goddess. There is no question about it. So if we think about that, this new cycle is very much an enlivening of the solar feminine. And for men, the Venus, where Venus is on their chart and how they relate to that is their inner feminine, the inner other, because the women have an inner masculine and men have an inner feminine, and Mars on a woman's chart will represent her inner masculine, and Venus on a man's chart will represent his inner feminine. So if a man is going through their Venus return right now, this is extraordinarily important time for them to be tuning into and working with this particular cycle as a way to empower their relationship to the inner feminine within them, which of course then empowers their relationship to the external feminine as well. Did that answer your question?
Yes. Yes. So one other thing I was wondering about is, are there any notable differences then for the men and women for how to work with the Venus energies?
Yeah, that's something that we're still kind of investigating. And we had some men in our Venus our Venus teleclass cycle over this last year and a half. And they had very profound experiences, incredibly profound experiences. And I think it was, because they were doing the same thing that the women were doing in terms of working with the cycle, but thinking of it more from the perspective of the relationship to the inner beloved or the inner feminine within them, how this is an aspect within us, within a man, on a man, like if it's the woman, it's their inner masculine, but either one is they support you always. They've always got your back, and they can help guide you when you develop a stronger relationship with that part of yourself. Mm-hmm. That they're there to help support you and guide you through your journey. So it's very empowering and very powerful to work with the cycle. And I think I don't think that Sumerians made it a difference. That they had women do it one way and men do it a different way. I think they did it as a collective journey. And so that's kind of what we've done, and it seems to have worked really well. So.
Okay. So this is kind of off the topic of the new Venus cycle, but I was wondering, this month, July, there are 2 full moons, and this is a calendar month here in July. So from a shamanic perspective, is this considered a blue moon?
No. Short answer, no. So
explain what from your perspective. I thought not, but I just wanted to hear
Well, because our calendar is not connected to a lunar cycle or a solar cycle. It's just arbitrarily starts on January 1st. I mean, it's not really connected to a solstice or an equinox or to a full moon or a new moon. Like some calendars, like the Jewish calendar and the Muslim calendar, start with when there's tiny crescent moon is visible at a certain time of year, or certain, in a certain phase or a certain place within how they determine their calendar. And we don't do that. And that means that things are shifting all the time. We have a solar calendar that is accurate for, within minutes for 3,000 years. It doesn't shift or drift, which was something that the Catholic Church actually wanted Copernicus to figure out. And so he figured it out, how to do that. And then Pope Gregory is the one that instituted it. But he had to tell them that it was unfortunate that what he discovered was that the Earth is not the center of the universe, that the Earth goes around the sun. So they made him promise not to tell. And so he didn't tell while he was alive, because, they had the Inquisition in those days. So he didn't tell until he died, and then he had a book published that told that because the church didn't want to look like they had it wrong. Anyway, so it's kind of interesting how that works. So having 2 full moons in a month is simply due to the fact that we have this calendar that's been set up in a certain way, and 2 full moons in a same sign. You can have 2 full moons in the same sign. So like if you have a full moon at 0 degrees Capricorn, like we have a full moon happening right now, and then we had another full moon at 29 degrees Capricorn. That's pretty interesting to pay attention to, because it doesn't usually work that way. Mm-hmm. And then also the original meaning of the blue moon, as written by Astronomy magazine back in the 1940s, was when there were 4 full moons in a season, meaning from an equinox to a solstice, or a solstice to an equinox. So then that would happen when there was a full moon right at the equinox or solstice point. So if that happened, then you'd have 4 of them before the next season. Usually there's 3. So that was the original meaning of a blue moon. And then, of course, somebody just translated that to 2 full moons in a month.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. But, it's still interesting to note the 2 full moons, and to honor anytime we honor the full moon and are with the full moon, it's worth being with in a ceremonial way, and to, see what the information and the intentions are that we want to be energizing at that particular time.
Okay. So, yeah. I noticed a question here in the chat screen. Looks like Karen Salvador is asking. She says, "I won't be in my Venus return for this next one, but I have so much Leo in my chart: Moon, Venus, Mars, Pluto, Jupiter, Vesta. That's quite a bit. That I wonder if it would help me to go through this class." So do you want to talk a little bit more about, who this might be appropriate for, this class that you...
It's a perfect segue into the next thing I wanted to talk about. So this upcoming teleclass, which will start in September, right before the first Venus-Moon conjunction, and then we'll be doing this little segment journey as well, but that's sort of an optional thing that people can maybe join us to do. But this teleclass is for you if you're entering your 8-year Venus return, but also if you have a lot of Leo on your chart, absolutely very helpful. And if you're desiring to learn or to experience a deeper sense of self-love, your personal sovereignty as an expression of the divine feminine that is you, that's within you, whatever that might look like, this definitely would be worth that. And if you really are interested in having the support of a ceremonial community, and what we're seeing that we're doing with this class is as it's a ceremony. It's, we're working with the ceremonially, also, teaching about the cycle and holding space for each person's individual experience, as well as what we're doing collectively. So we're connecting into that ancient ceremonial practice of working with it collectively. And we've updated it for current times and made it a teleclass, so it was easy for people from all over the world to join in with us. And we had such a great response to the first one. And people started asking us, "Are you going to do the next one?" We're like, "Yes, we are," because each one has a different flavor and a different experience that will be connected to it. So,
so how many times have you done this
Well, this last one was the very first time we did it.
Okay.
And we had such a great response that we decided that, we're onto something here. People really love this. It's been really helpful for them. Lots of transformation. We just finished an event at Faywood where we gave everybody a crown, Venus retrieving the crown at the 7th gate in the evenings with Jupiter and Regulus. So we did a big ceremony for the people that could make it in person. And we created an online ceremony for people that couldn't make it in person. So
that sounds fantastic. Like a real initiation, where you're releasing anything that's holding you back, or any blocks, or any ways that you are undermining, self-sabotage, or
right.
So that you're in integrity with yourself, and you're going into the shadowland. You're facing the shadow. You're healing the shadow. You're doing deep shadow work.
Absolutely.
And then coming out in your full radiance. I would, this is an ongoing journey, the whole, deepening in your, and since you have all these other women, is it women and men in the class?
We have had men also in our classes. We've had more women, but I think that as the men catch on, they'll find out that this could be a really cool thing for them to do, and we'll have more men. The men that were in the class, I think, had really profound experiences. So hopefully we'll have more men. We'd love to have.
I would think that it really help you, with empowerment and self-esteem issues, self-worth issues. And also, I started to say, having the community, because there's a lot of power in having a witness to your journey.
Yes, being witnessed, and also shared intention, because of course when we have shared intention, it exponentially increases that intention. So when you have people helping hold a similar intention with you, it's really amazing. So if people want to know more about this, this website's kind of under construction. It's called venusalchemy.com. Tammy and I decided to dedicate a website to this process, and we're just in the process of building it. But if you go to that website, you can click on the link that'll take you to the information about the class. So we're still building that, but there is information there. And basically it's one class a month during the Venus cycle for the as she's going through all the gates, and then one class for when she's in the underworld as well. So it's pretty cool.
And so this one is going to be with Sekhmet?
Yeah, Leo Overtones. So working with the Divine Sovereign Queen. So however, and Sekhmet she's definitely one of my personal goddesses that I've connected with hugely over the years, and so I feel like she's definitely going to be guiding us through this particular process.
So, tell us a little bit. Do you mind telling us a little bit more about Sekhmet?
She's pretty wild. I mean, when the Egyptologists started to figure out what her story was, they didn't want to tell people because it was so kind of they didn't see the feminine in this way. But there's a story that's connected to her, and this is not her whole story, because Sekhmet was actually the divine consort of Ptah, and Ptah is the master builder, and together they had a son named Nefertum, and Nefertum is the precursor, or the Egyptian version, or the Greeks had their version of Nefertum, which was Asclepius, the healer. So out of the divine union between Sekhmet and Ptah came Nefertum, who was a healer like Asclepius. But her story, one of the stories that is told about her, is that Ra, the sun god, she's the daughter of Ra, is looking down upon the people, and they're no longer keeping the sacred ways, and they've fallen into bad habits and not good ways of being with each other. So he sends her to sort of straighten things out, and so she goes down, but she's so fierce. And she just starts dispatching everybody, just gobbling them up, she's this lioness who comes to Earth and so fierce. And then Ra says, "Okay, I think that's good enough. You can come back now." But she won't come back. She's like on a mission. She's not going to give up. So he's like, "Oh gosh, now what do I do?" So he goes to the other gods and asks. They come up with a plan, and basically the plan is they take pomegranate juice and crush it up, and put it in beer and put that on the battlefield. And when she stops to drink it, thinking it's blood, because she likes to drink blood apparently, then she gets so drunk she passes out, and when she wakes up, she's Hathor. She's transformed into the goddess Hathor. So that's just a very interesting story about Sekhmet. But again, that's not all that she is. And there are actually Sekhmet priestesses, and there are Sekhmet temples all over Egypt. There's one at Karnak, and I got to see, and there's actually still a Sekhmet statue there. It's one of the original statues that hasn't been moved to a museum or someplace.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible. I stood in front of her and just cried because she's just this beautiful, powerful radiance and presence and authentic and a being who, and her beauty and her integrity, and I just love her. So.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that, there's, I think, I was just listening to this YouTube with former President Jimmy Carter, and he said the number one abuse was, in the world is with women.
Yes.
and children, and the number one country that, there's like just horrendous things that go on with women is Egypt.
Yes.
And so I just think it's interesting that I just wonder about that. I just wonder what kind of I don't know. I just think things eventually balance themselves out when there has been when the sacredness of the divine feminine has been dishonored.
Yes.
For so long, I think that there's not human balancing out, but divine justice, right. That is.
Yes, I love what you're saying. I feel like with Jupiter, witness to Venus at this time, as she ends and begins a new cycle, and as she's coming into, as she's been coming into her sovereignty and reclaiming that wisdom aspect of the feminine as grandmother. Mm-hmm. That we've been in this last cycle that's going to complete as we move into the next cycle. And then as she stands in her divine sovereignty in a place of self-love, self-acceptance, self-approval, self-respect, all these things that are going to be so much a part of this next cycle that she's going to be working on re-empowering herself with.
I just wonder what's going to happen. Because I've just intuited that there's going to be a total resurgence. I'm intuiting that something is going to be really happening that is going to create a shift. What that looks like, or how that comes about, or, the consciousness, the whole, I just think something is going to actually materialize as far as rebalancing.
It's a really great point. And what will it take? And so, it could be easier, it could be harder. I think a lot of it depends on maybe where we're at, in a collective consciousness. And
exactly. It's the collective. It's and I think we're in that deciding point right now, from my perspective.
Yes.
Which way it's going to go. I think by this fall, we'll know what we're going to choose as a collective.
And I think, and we're probably at a choice point all the time, but,
yes.
some choice points.
Yes. But I think as far as the balance, as far as the collective,
yes,
I think it's pretty split.
So as much as we can do personally to be in greater touch with the divine feminine, whether we are getting in touch with that aspect that's within us, or what we're here to really connect with, or if we're men, really honoring the divine feminine within ourselves, then that helps the collective.
Yes.
Because we're putting that energy into the greater collective. Yes. So the more of us doing that, the better.
I think it's more powerful, actually. Consciousness has much more power. The light has much more power.
Yes.
To affect a change. It doesn't require as much, really, to create a shift. Mm-hmm. So someone here is, I think it's Sally Leathers. Her birth date is August 22nd. She's a 29-degree Leo sun. And she's wondering what significance this will have pertaining to this cycle, even though it is not a Venus return for her.
Right. So this was kind of something we were just talking about a little while ago, that if you have Leo on your chart, and and at 29 Leo, that's like with Regulus. The sun was
yes,
absolutely with Regulus at the time you were born. And so now with Jupiter passing this point, Venus is going to pass it 3 times. So definitely very personally activating for you, and worth, you know, finding ways to connect with this, and whether it's on your own or whether you wanted to be part of the Venus teleclass and work with this cycle over time. One of the things I always think that's really great about working with it, I always worked with the Venus cycles prior to doing this with the one, I'm Venus in Aries, so when there's a Aries overtone, I was always working with it. And then when it was my own overtone, I would work with it. But now I'm seeing there's a lot of value to working with it if it has other, you know, you have other connections to that particular archetypal energy. But also anybody can benefit from working with the mysteries of self-love and self-confidence and self-approval and self-acceptance, because that's something so missing off the planet right now. So whether you had that or not, you can benefit from working with this particular cycle. And just because of the way things are stacking up in the sky right now, just even going out and seeing Venus and Jupiter and Regulus together can be very profound experience.
Yes, I love to soak up the energies of the night skies, you know, and to focus on the certain, you know, I've been really drinking in Jupiter and Venus, and when they all were conjunct with the moon, you know, right after that last new moon, it was just a very, very powerful, very, you know, it just really, I feel empowered. It connects and activates that energy within my own psyche for me. So.
Yes, that's exactly right. And that's something that ancient people knew, and that's why they worked with it. And that's something we can remember and we can work with and benefit from. So it's beautiful that you said that.
Yeah. So here's another Claudette Thomas. She wants to know, if we look at the Venus cycle as a microcycle, is there a macro cycle that Venus goes through relating to the ecliptic, Regulus, and the return of the divine feminine? This comes to mind being that the Maya and others charted Venus and the larger cycles.
Yes, and that I did sort of speak to this a little bit, but this is a great question. So the Sumerians were honoring the Venus cycle when Venus rose as a morning star near the spring equinox. And the reason that was because the spring equinox, the sun was rising on the galactic cross at the galactic edge 6,500 years ago. Now the spring equinox is at the south galactic pole 6,500 years later. And it's the December solstice, or the, you know, when the solstice reaches 0 Capricorn, rising on the galactic cross at the galactic center, that is really the big news right now. Like, this is what tells us we're at a big turning of an age. It's not just moving from the age of Aquarius, age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. It's a whole great year shift, bigger, you know, 26,000 year shift, not like a 2,000 year shift. It's way bigger than that. And so the Venus cycle that rises, the Venus rising closest to the December solstice, which happened in January 2014, that's the cycle that we would work with, that the Sumerians would have worked with if that had been the situation then. So that was part of what inspired us to create a way of working with it collectively, you know, to make a collective process that people could work with. And it worked so well that we decided, well, we're just going to keep doing it because it's so powerful and really helpful for people to stay connected. And the other thing about this, what's happening right now too, like the whole point with Regulus, you know, and we're shifting from one cycle to the other, and how Regulus is such a big part of that. Regulus just changed from being in Leo for over 2,000 years to being now in Virgo for the next more than 2,000 years. So there's been a huge shift in the archetypal energy that's connected to Regulus. And so so this particular Venus cycle it's like, that's part of what we're going to be investigating. What does that mean? You know, how do we relate to that now? What is it? What is the intention, and how can we align our intention with that intention?
Yes.
So that'll be really.
I think there's a shift in the way the archetypes are constellating, and how we're interpreting them, and how we're expressing them in our lives.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it's tremendously significant that we've had this fixed wealth star, Regulus, which is the fixed wealth star.
Well, and it was
of all the fixed stars, you know, Regulus is probably the one that's, and it's also the Archangel Raphael is associated with that position in the heavens as the protector there and the watcher over that part of the heaven. She is the angel of healing, the primary angel of healing. So, which really fits with the Virgo.
Regulus is one of the 4 royal stars of ancient times. And so we have Aldebaran, Antares, Regulus, and Fomalhaut, all connected to the archangels, of course, and the different directions and what they were watching over. But also, with the exception of maybe Fomalhaut, they're all Bohemian stars too, those magical stars that the alchemists were working with as well. So it's really... it's just like we live in magical times, right?
Yes, and this is the year, I think this is the year of alchemy, where there can be quite a bit, the magic, the miracles. It's, having recognizing that about yourself, that your ability to make magic, you have to recognize yourself. You have to step into your own empowerment. No one else is going to do that. You're the one that has to step into your power, into your own greatness.
It's always our choice, and so it's time for us to make that choice. And if we do make that choice, we'll be supported.
Yes,
so much.
We're always supported. Whatever we decide for ourselves, we will, will be right. Whatever we decide.
Yes. Some things will be more fun than others.
And some are definitely more fun than others. So, and not that the ego, the lower mind, really doesn't really want you to be empowered. It wants to maintain that through using fear and keeping you in the grips of fear, keeping you more, in a lower level of manifesting,
right?
So that you're seemingly safe, but really when you do that, you're actually more in jeopardy when you don't really step into your truth, into your full empowerment. So there is another question, Robin Barrows. She's asking, is having a natal Venus at 21 degrees Leo significant at this time?
Absolutely. You are so on the leading edge of everything that's going on. Very profound activations that are taking place with that, and definitely worth knowing about and tuning into, and everybody will have their own guidance as how to work with this. So tuning into that and paying attention, going out and being with Venus in the sky right now. In fact, 21 Leo is right where Venus and Jupiter are right now today, if I'm not
Yes, they're conjunct, and then that's exactly where Mars and Venus conjunct. Did you know that?
Yes, exactly.
So it's the same point that Jupiter and Venus kiss is exactly where Mars and Venus will kiss. And then, of course, we have later this fall, Mars and Venus will kiss again. I mean, it's very unusual, the things that are happening. It's just very significant.
It is so magical. It really is. And Venus and Mars, whole other story about their journey and how there's mythic stories that talk about how they come together in the sky. And, Dumuzi, who is Inanna's consort, is the one that gets sent to the underworld after she comes back. I didn't finish the whole story there. And that they come together and meet. And then Mars is just coming up from the underworld, actually right now in August. So they're going to have this long dance together in the morning sky. But in February of last year, Venus and Mars met, and then Mars went right into the underworld. Like they were for a short time, and then Mars went into the underworld. Which is this, part of this story of Inanna saying, "Okay, I'm returning, and now it's your turn. Now it's your turn to go through this initiation." So the masculine is currently, as we go through the month of July, still in that initiation process with the sun in the underworld.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, it's just a whole big lineup and setup of one thing. It's like dominoes.
Yes. It's beautiful.
How everything is just set up and lined up at this time for activating these changes. I mean, we have a choice, but definitely the scene is set for us to, things are being lined up so that, we're really being guided in a way that we will make the optimal choice, hopefully. So,
right.
So anyway, is there anything else? Let's see.
Well, I just wanted to say really quickly that I did put in the books, Inanna, Queen of Heaven and Earth, Her Stories and Hymns from Sumer by Diane Wolfstein and Samuel Kramer. You can get, there's also Descent to the Goddess, A Way of Initiation for Women by Sylvia Pereira, that also describes the story, not so much from the astrological point of view, neither of these do from the house, but it gives you more of the in-depth experience of the story. And you can get the Descent story online. You can actually just probably Google it and find it, but I just wanted people to know that. And if people want to find me, they can go to my website, either CaylinCastell.com or CelestialTimings.com, and I will make this PDF available if they sign up for free Celestial Timings. I have to get that done as soon as we get off here, but I will make it available. When they sign up, they'll get a link to or access to the PDF for that if they're interested.
I see one more question. I don't know if you want to answer this. You want to take off the slideshow and we can...
Yeah, I'm going to do that here.
Okay.
Okay, how's that? Can you see me now?
I'm not seeing you yet. No,
not
yet.
Okay,
no, I'm not yet. There you are.
Oh, yay.
Welcome back. So, so Symbol System is asking, what do you think about the fact that this Venus retrograde cycle takes place on the Sphinx cusp?
Well, yes. I mean, I think we've been kind of talking about that, but the lion in the sky, the constellation that is the lion in the sky, is reflected as the Sphinx on the ground, as above, so below. And that was one of the ways the Egyptians were connecting with that. And interestingly, the Sphinx is about the Hall of Records. And so my sense of that is it's not just like a literal Hall of Records. Maybe we, we'll find a literal Hall of Records that there's lots of information that says that maybe we already have, but I feel like that connects to the Hall of Records that's in our DNA. Mm-hmm. So we have the records within us. They live inside of us. So all this activity happening with Regulus, the Sphinx point, is activating our own Hall of Records that we can tune into. And that's one of the ways we can work with this ceremonially, is with that intention and activation within our own awareness and ceremonial intent. So, yeah.
That's very powerful. Yes, I mean, it's just gives you goose flesh when you start really thinking about all the things that are being integrated at this time. So, all right, so that's it for today's show. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Conversations to Enlighten and Heal. My next webinar show is on Wednesday, July 29th with Mo Abdobaki, who will talk about Venus retrograde from the perspective of Vedic astrology and tarot. Have a beautiful day, everyone. A warm mahalo. Much love to you. Wishing you happy days always. Thanks again, Cayelin. It's been a pleasure having you with us.
My total pleasure, and thank you for inviting me. I love sharing this.
So until next time, relax, enjoy your life, and stay connected.